Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Joomi Kim, who is a biologist and an essayist, and she has recently produced and published a video essay about her journey from being a hardcore Obama supporter to now an open Trump supporter, due to the various lies, falsehoods, and manipulation tactics that she saw being produced by the mainstream media. She's a very level-headed person, and if you are on the fence, she makes a very compelling argument with empathy and a whole lot of smarts about why Trump is her candidate of choice and why Harris worries her. You can find links to her work, which I highly suggest you check out, down there in the description. And if you enjoy this content, consider liking, subscribing, and donating via the links below. Without further ado, here is Joomi Kim. So your video is getting some plays.
Yeah.
Not so much on YouTube, but tons on Twitter.
No, when I search on YouTube for it using the exact title of my video, it doesn't come up.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. If it were a cat video, it probably would, but
Yeah, no, just not a Democrat video. What prompted you to make that? And it's wonderfully made, and why I wanted to interview you is so people can check it out and get to know you better.
well, it was a conversation with some people who are lifelong Democrats. I was actually working on a different video, but I abruptly switched gears when I was talking to them because I felt like, okay, the election's coming up, and if I want to try to reach people like that, people who are, still getting all their news from like New York Times and things like that. I felt like, okay, I should work on this, try to get this done. I had about a month. So I just, yeah, I knew that the topic of politics was going to come up, and that we weren't going to lie about who we're going to vote for. So, but I also felt like we wouldn't be able to explain our vote in just a few minutes, and like they just wouldn't understand without like seeing receipts, like, oh, look at all these times when the media lied and things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a video with like all the receipts showing just how much the media lies and things like that. Yeah.
Are you, you circulate among mostly Democrat or liberal leaning people?
I used to. I was completely surrounded just by mostly Democrats, but a little bit less so lately in the last few years because I've sought out other people who think like me. So it's a little bit more mixed now, but a lot of my older friends and some family are still Democrats. Yeah.
What caused you to shift your social milieu?
But by the way, are we already recording?
You caught me.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just didn't know. What caused me to shift? It was during COVID. Actually, it started with the George Floyd riots, and I saw that the media was being very dishonest there. I learned about Tony Timpa, who was a white guy. Have you heard of him? He was a white guy who got killed in a similar manner to George Floyd. But, he got virtually no media attention. So that was disturbing. And then from there, I learned more about like just stats on police, brutality or whatever you want to call it, And I saw that the media was just telling lies about that. And then once the COVID vaccines came out, at some point after that, I started to look into what they were saying, and then I saw that they were lying about things. And my background is a biologist, so I just like went and read papers, and it was very different from what the media was saying. By then, also, I got vaccinated. Like I got 2 doses of Moderna, so it's not like when I got the doses, it's not like I was 100% sure that it was safe, but I thought it was safe enough for me to get it. But, once I started like looking into it more, yeah, I just
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, this is not what the media has been saying.
That particular issue was very fraught because everybody could show up to any given debate with 12 papers. And it was just like a gish gallop of data and interpretation. And like what happens on Twitter, something happens, or in social media in general, but X is just a very quicker, bigger platform for sharing information. But whenever an event happens, all of a sudden everybody is an expert in that particular field, whether it's economics or Ukrainian history or biology or whatever. And somebody like me who kind of tries to maintain humility, especially except for when I have outbursts of emotion. I who knows what, and the stakes were turned up so high, and the temperature was turned up so high, and then you have what YouTube did to me when I actually tried to have an honest conversation about that. They turned off my channel for a week. So it's like
Oh,
there's a big cost, and I know Brett paid that cost too with
yeah.
demonetization. They still let him stream and stuff like that. How did you communicate your ideas, and what did you meet with when you began to communicate what you were learning about that thing, that medical intervention?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started a Substack actually, and I did that because I was so outraged by what I was seeing. The first article I wrote was about spike protein, actually. And in this case, like, so you were just saying that it's really difficult to tell what's going on because there's all these papers, right? And you can find papers as saying one thing, and then you can find papers saying sort of the opposite, or at least contradicting the first batch, contradicting. Um, but when it came to statements that I was seeing about like spike protein, for example, like the evidence was there was so much evidence, right? They were saying that spike protein is not toxic or cytotoxic, or it's completely safe, and you could find so many studies that showed that that wasn't the case. But so if you were reporting on this honestly, like even if you were not sure about all these studies, you can't say there are no studies, or that there's no evidence, right? That's what they were
One way
claiming.
or another.
What what do you mean?
No evidence to the contrary of their benefits, or
Yeah, they
no
were saying
evidence to their
they're saying
detriments.
there's no evidence that spike protein is cytotoxic, which was clearly untrue because there were plenty of papers, right, that were using all different kinds of methods to show like that spike protein was causing harms, in like animal models, or like in I forget, like just all different methods they were using. So to say there was no evidence was absolutely ridiculous. If it'd be a different thing if you were saying, okay, there are some studies that seem to suggest that, it could cause harm, but here are the problems with those studies, right? That's not what Reuters fact check was saying.
Hmm.
So that was one clear lie. And then there were many such instances like this, like, and then it was like, the spike protein can't, move around, or the mRNA vaccine can't move around from this side of the injection site. And then you'd find papers from, highly credible journals, like scientific journals, right? Um, it was that showed that what the media or Reuters fact check or whatever was saying, or even the CDC actually, it was that it was a BS. So then you just see that over and over and over again, and then I was just like, okay, they are clearly lying, and it's always in one direction, which is to say that the vaccine was safe and effective and all these things. And then when we got to the point where they were mandating the vaccines, but by then it was 100% clear that we had a lot of evidence to show that it did not prevent transmission or infection. That to me was crazy, right? I mean,
Like,
by the
why would they not only cover that it's dangerous, but also cover that it's ineffectual? Like, it's neither safe nor effective. Why not just choose one?
yeah, the whole thing. So that was when I saw that there was also this machine, behind when they want to I know it sounds very conspiratorial, but there is a machine, the corporate media and certain people in the government and in World Health Organizations and of course the pharmaceutical companies that they can align to push a message and also slander people, you know. That's another thing that people can clearly see that they lie about people, you know. And then, so then if you find that a news outlet is lying about someone, you catch them in a lie, why believe them in anything else, you know? Anyway, I've lost track of what your original question was. I went on a rant.
Well, so when the bubble bursts for you, you're still ensconced in people who are in the bubble.
Mostly, although by then I had sort of met some people who were outside of the bubble, which was definitely helpful for my sanity at
Yeah.
some point during lockdowns, you know. Brett was definitely one of those people. And then I also met some people locally. I actually looked for people like this. That was very helpful. Yeah. And I think actually you had asked how I had communicated all this. But anyway, yeah, it was through the Substack, you know, that I started writing about this. Yeah. Anyway.
So before this bubble popping experience of 2020, where had you been? Like, how political were you, and how entrenched in what you would later see as wrong think in the non-Orwellian sense, just wrong
Yeah.
ways of thinking? Had you been? And then, like, how much did you have to change or how much did your ideology start to crumble? Because if you pull a thread on one thing and then you're like, well, but this thing looks like, and wait, and then this thing. So how based are you, I guess, is the ultimate question. But I want to like chart your, like, that crumbling and that
Evolution.
reemergence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Yeah. I was 100% a Democrat. I had always voted Democrat. I had volunteered for Obama's campaign in Northern Virginia. In the 2016 election, I voted for Hillary Clinton. When Trump won in 2016, I was very, very upset. I probably cried that night. I'm pretty sure I did. And then once that bubble started to burst with George Floyd, that got me reading about some of the things, like Thomas Sowell, for example. So when it came to economics, I was starting to become more open to more right-leaning or even libertarian viewpoints. Because, you know, I had always thought like, oh, if you care about, you know, poorer people or people who are well off or whatever, like, of course you're on the left, right? Because the government helps them, you know. So, but, you know, I started to see that, okay, like their regulations can have unintended consequences. And then also the people who are lobbying for government regulations, they're like the biggest corporations and all these things. They're doing the things that help them, not small businesses. So a lot of the regulations they'll put out like will make it harder for smaller businesses. So things like that. So I'm not saying I'm like libertarian now, but at least when it comes to economics, I'm much more at least neutral. I still think that there's a place for regulations, you know. The other thing is that I was always big on environment, on protecting the environment, you know.
Why?
And I don't know. I just love nature. I love animals. That's why I became a biologist in the first place. I mean, even though I didn't end up studying animals, but it's I want to protect nature. I think it's worth you know, protecting, like preventing species from going extinct, even if they're not valuable to humans, you know, and ecosystems and stuff like that. So that was always a big thing for me. I had always seen the Republican Party as, you know, sort of against science or against, you know, environmental regulations.
Conservation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Drill, baby,
against,
drill.
right, yeah, and against climate change and all these things. I definitely believed in climate change. I still believe in climate change. I just don't believe everything they say about their predictions and models and what they're trying to do. I think they're using climate change to control things and, you know, to make money off of more regulations and things like that, while ignoring things like pollution and, extinction and things like that, like clean
Or
air, clean water,
endocrine
right?
disruptors in children's
Right. Yeah,
food.
yeah. Microplastics. I mean, we could go on,
Yeah.
how wind turbines are, like hurting whales, like they're ignoring things like that, in my opinion.
Well, by the way, are
So,
you a whale psychologist?
no, but I mean,
Oh, okay.
that sounds like it would be a fun
It would have
job.
been great to meet one in person.
Yeah. I wish. Yeah.
There's this thing that you keep on bringing up. You use this word they, the they them, the real non-binary entity. It's a dangerous thought. It's really difficult to get a handle on. Does that cause you discomfort? You already kind of apologized, as one has to do when you start to say they, but to get a sense of what that thing is, you call it the machine in your documentary slash video essay. You call it, you adopt these different terms for it, the deep state and stuff like that. How did you first allow yourself to conceive of that and prevent yourself going full Alex Jones, presuming that you haven't? Like, how do you navigate? Like, wait, there's something. There's a wizard. The image on the screen of this cave is being produced by something, and that something is staffed by some ones.
Yeah. It was definitely during COVID that I felt like I saw coordinated attempts to push a certain agenda. It was how almost the entire corporate media was aligned towards that agenda, lockdowns or pushing vaccines and mandates, also demonizing early treatments of COVID. And it was the media, it was certain politicians, many of them Democrat, and then also members of, I guess, what you call deep state, or people who are maybe part of the U.S. security state, or maybe former U.S. security state, that are in and out of government over the years. So they would be included. I feel like I'm forgetting some here.
Oh, don't
Of
forget the
course.
universities.
Oh, right, right. Yes, yes. Universities. Yeah, certain experts, who would always be like the ones that are like referred to. Of course, certain organizations like nonprofits or like the World Health Organization and and then like this kind of disinformation campaign, right? That would be part government, but part these partnerships that they'd have with these
Hmm.
organizations. So it was just it was all in unison. Oh, also the like medical organizations,
Hmm.
So yeah, and certain doctors, celebrity doctors who get up there and you see them everywhere, right? So yeah, I guess that's what I mean by the machine. And you see it not just with COVID, but like when it comes to wars, like the war in Ukraine and a lot of other issues that you just see it come up over and over again. Um, some people will just show up again and again,
Hmm.
like over the decades. So yeah, I guess that's what I mean.
So the topic of your video is about Trump and making a case for Trump from a centrist ex-Democrat. I don't know if you want to use the term politically homeless. I advise against it, but if that's what you identify as, I'm cool with that. And you're trying to make a case for Trump. You had an emotional reaction to him in 2016. What was Did the way that you saw things happening in 2020 change? Is that where you started looking at him differently, and what broke through or changed in how you viewed that particular man?
So it didn't change right away, even after all the COVID stuff. That was also partly because Trump, we got Operation Warp Speed under Trump's administration, right?
Hmm.
And he was proud of the vaccines and all this. although he didn't try to mandate it. Um, so I was still very critical of him then. Um, and then I never thought about voting for him. I was for Kennedy. Um, but I did start to see some things that made me realize that, okay, like some of the things I thought about Trump, I have to revisit. I think one of the first things was just seeing what he said, the full clip of the very fine people speech
Mm-hmm.
after Charlottesville. And I saw that and I was like, whoa, people blatantly lied about that, you know? So after that, I felt like, okay, I have to question everything I've been told about Trump because honestly, I haven't really listened to him speak himself. I've only really just heard about him through media filter. I
Mm-hmm.
barely listened to anything directly, like any of
Mm-hmm.
his speeches or
Mm-hmm.
interviews.
Yeah. They did a really good job. His political opponents did a really good job of like kind of pre-censoring him or making him so toxic that people would refuse to even listen to him, creating a gut reaction just to his voice through
Yeah,
these selective clips that people like, I don't ever want to hear anything that he has to say.
yeah.
So like it's great, phenomenal propaganda mechanism. Learn so
Oh
much about
yeah.
manipulating humans through this
Oh
time that we're in.
yes. Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, so I hadn't heard much from him. I'm trying to think when it became acceptable for me to vote for him. I'm trying to think. It was very gradual after that, you know? And then when Bobby Kennedy also endorsed him, I mean, that was a big deal for me because it's not that I 100% trust anything from any of these people, Trump, Kennedy included. Um, but I trusted Kennedy more than any of these people. And I felt like, okay, if he's endorsing him and he's saying he's going to play a role in his administration, that mattered to me. Um, and you brought up whether I felt politically homeless. I did, but I feel a little bit less so because I feel like this Republican Party now, it's not the same as it was, like I mentioned
Yeah.
in the video. I feel like
No.
it's this sort of giant umbrella that has a diverse mix of people. We don't all agree on things. Kennedy himself has said he doesn't agree on certain things with Trump.
Yeah.
But we
And
don't have to
vice
all
versa.
agree. Yeah, we don't have to all agree in order to feel like we're at least represented in the party.
Yeah.
So at least I feel somewhat represented. I mean, we'll have
Yeah.
to
We all
see.
agree about the oligarchy. It seems to be a common theme.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is all like, they seem to be much more militant. Like, if you don't believe these very specific things, like you're out, you are not welcome in this party. You know, the
Hmm.
Republican Party seems much more diverse right now. So yeah, I feel much more represented in it. I don't know how long that will last because parties, they can change, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It can become corrupt over time. We
Oh,
don't,
it
you
absolutely
know.
will. And all the
Yeah.
people who are united now will eventually settle down into their different streams. And
Yeah,
then there'll
and
be
things
more
might make
infighting.
it fall apart, you know. We argue
Yeah.
over something, you know.
Yeah.
So it might fracture, but at the moment, I guess we have this common enemy. So,
Hmm.
and we have some common values. So,
Hmm. So
yeah.
when speaking the verboten phrase, I'm voting for Trump in certain elite company or semi-elite company, the Democrat people that you know, the upper middle class, wherever you're at, class-wise, what are the sticking points? Like, what are the themes that you see that people are refusing or really entrenched against Trump or this party, this big tent neo-Republican party? What do they cling to?
Um, well, I've heard people they'll bring up things that they've heard, you know, like, oh, the tax cuts are going to be bad, or some other bad thing that they did, you know, that the media told them that he did, you know, things like that. Like I remember I had a conversation with a friend about this. They were bringing it up. This was before I made the video. I showed him the video. I don't know if he's watched it yet. He hasn't said anything. Um, I know that one of my friends showed one of her friends who's very, very on the left, and the reaction I don't know that they finished my video, but the reaction was, I don't understand it, but it was something like, we have too much information now. We're not meant to have all this information because of social media. It's just unprecedented. So people, it's just stupid, or like, we're
Hmm.
too stupid. I
Hmm.
didn't understand that
Well, I
reaction.
mean that
Um,
sounds like it could be, and who knows, but it could be a response to cognitive dissonance. Like this is too much, and I can't. I would have to. This is one problem. If and probably one criticism of your video is that you're blowing up too many assumptions all at once. It's too much of a red pill. It's like a horse red pill, you know. It's like, okay, if and so,
I
and the
know.
people are like, okay, I can do one and maybe think about it, but you're giving me two and now three, you know. So maybe
Yeah.
they were expressing like a human brain can't like update the software this much.
No, it's probably true. Like, and it wasn't overnight for me to get to where I am, right? It,
Yeah.
it was over years. So I understand it. I don't actually expect that somebody can watch a single video or documentary and
Hmm.
totally do a 180. I don't think it works that way, especially if you are so entrenched, in your
Yeah.
viewpoint. But if it opens a crack, then I feel like, okay, that's something.
Hmm.
That and I want to just be able to explain to people in my life what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
for them to have some understanding, and it's not coming from nowhere, or that, oh my God, she's gone crazy,
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
What were your concerns with beginning to question the narratives? Like, were you concerned about losing your friend group? Were you ever concerned about losing your faith in humanity, or something like having a crisis of a personal slash ideological nature?
um well, when I first started to write about vaccines, I was a bit concerned. Well, at the time, I was working for a company, a tech company, and somebody did try to get me fired actually because of what I was writing. But I think that
Hmm.
subconsciously, I was already kind of ready to like leave that role anyway. So it might have been different if I were really scared of losing my job. But I think that, yeah, but that did happen, and after that, I kind of felt like I would like to be in a position where I don't have to worry about that.
Hmm.
Um, but I was afraid of that. And I'm still afraid of things related to that, like my physical safety, like because I've seen what people have done to other people who are dissidents, not just smearing them in the media, that you can handle that, but I just mean, like, spreading people's home addresses around and things like that. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I was afraid of that, and I still am a little bit. And of course, I was also afraid of, like what people would say. With vaccine stuff, I wasn't afraid as much about what people would think, like my friends or family would think, because I think they know that I wasn't some crazy anti-vaxxer. And the fact that I was a biologist helped. But with the Trump stuff, it's harder. It's a little
Hmm.
harder because people really can't understand that. Like, they might be able to understand the vaccine stuff, but the
Hmm.
Trump stuff,
You
um,
know,
yeah.
just a slight point. The media and their handlers, the Democrat Party, have taken up since Trump had a serious shot at the presidency, have brought up this fascist Hitler rhetoric over and over and over again, and it's tiring. To say the least. It's unoriginal, it's lazy, it's boring, but that's the only thing that they, at least Kamala, seems to have left, and her handlers, and and you can. I think that people would be open to saying that that rhetoric could have facilitated the two assassination attempts against Donald Trump. But the other problem with that rhetoric is that when they say that the Madison Square Garden event few days ago was just a Hitler rally or Nazi rally, they're calling every single person in that theater a Nazi, and a Nazi is the greatest for one reason or another, the greatest smear that one could assign to another person. That is basically calling this person is subhuman, wants to rob me of my humanity, and therefore any force used against them is justified. So everyone in that theater or that garden, amphitheater, it's whatever, mega theater, whatever it is now has a target painted on their back, and it's not just the politicians on the stage that are the enemy that need to be concerned about their safety. It's everyone in there, and I don't think that people really realize the downstream effect of that rhetoric, especially the Democrats are the people who are feeding on that news cycle. We see videos surface of like strange interactions of people flipping out because somebody's wearing a Trump hat, but that's the least of one's worries.
I mean, it's terrible. They're radicalizing their people, right? And making them like rabid, to the point where they would attack Trump supporters, and like you mentioned, some people might want to attempt assassination. So it's crazy. It's crazy to me that people still believe it too after all this time. Mm-hmm. I ignore it at this point.
Yeah.
They just completely lost credibility to me.
Yeah. And that's why I think discussions like this and the work that you put out there are very important to humanize the Trump supporters, such as yourself.
Yeah, that was one of the motivations as well, because I felt like if Trump wins, some people are going to be very upset at Trump supporters. They're not going to understand why half the population voted for him. And they will think that half of the population of the United States are like Nazis or racist or bigoted or whatever, right? Yeah. Which is a very dangerous place for a country to be in. And they need to, and even if they don't ever get to the point where they love Trump, if they could at least see, good reasons why someone might vote for him, right? It might, tone down the rhetoric, tone down the level of hate, misunderstanding. Yeah.
What are some of these reasons, these great reasons that you have to vote for Trump?
For me, free speech is the top one. It's very scary to see what Democrats have been doing, what they are okay with, of moderating social media, content moderation, whatever euphemisms.
Kamala has stated several times, and not this campaign, but and who knows what she actually believes, but she said that she's been in favor of unpersoning people and controlling information.
Yeah. And when Trump was kicked off of Twitter, she was also all for that as well. Under
that should be disqualifying.
Yeah, I mean, under our Harris regime, that's what we would expect, more of that. For me, if it were just that would be enough. But it's all these other things, like Kennedy, and Musk being part of the administration.
The coalition that Trump has formed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Something I hoped I made clear in the video I made. I don't know if it is, but it's not about Trump. I'm not a Trump fangirl. I have my issues with him, but it's the fact that we can feel represented, that there's this coalition. We're making an agreement, Yeah. That's how I see it. Yeah.
I think that's actually true and the case, and why the silly but sticky concept of Project 2025 that the mainstream has used against him is trying to pin him as very radical and only going to be listening to very radical people. And you can probably say about J.D. Vance that he is connected to thinkers. He's okay with thinking about things outside of the liberal box. But while that could be the case, I don't think Trump is like that. He's always been a 90s Democrat. Yeah. And then the people that he's assembling are going to be probably less neocons, less people that have been in that State Department, etc., forever, and more people who are connected to it enough to be competent, but not necessarily wanting to do terrible fascistic things. I don't even know if America, I was driving around America this morning, my little pocket of it. I'm like, I don't think America can be fascist. We're too big and we're too diverse already. Like it's not going to really fly. But whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's moderate,
Yeah.
and he's not even that good in like reining in spending. He was a big spender, which is great. So, yeah.
Yeah. What's your background a little bit? Like you just, all I know is that you just became a biologist one day.
Yeah, I was born in
What was your,
Iran.
yeah,
Well,
what
I'm
was
from,
the environment of your upbringing?
I was born in New York, grew up in Queens, and my mother was a nurse. My father was a musician.
Really?
Yeah, they were from Korea, um, and
So
they
they're immigrants then.
exactly, yeah, they didn't come together. They met in New York, but yeah, they came from Korea. Yeah, I would say that they weren't typical in some ways because since my father was a musician, he was not your typical kind of person that felt like my child needs to go and become a doctor or something like that. Yeah, so they were always very pretty open about like what I would go out and do, for a living. I mean, sometimes they had things to say, but especially when I first started undergrad, I started off as a philosophy major, and my mother did ask, like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, but I love it. But eventually so I was a philosophy major and I dropped out, worked for a bit, and then went back to school and, studied science, and then did a PhD at Rutgers University, where I did research related to like, the project was how to make algae, a certain type of algae, make more oils, which you can actually turn into biodiesel. It was
Oh, okay.
actually like funded by the NSF because like they were all about trying to, find solutions for global warming. At the
Yeah.
time, I was this very idealistic person, and I thought that that would actually be helpful. But I no longer think that's the case. But anyway,
No, you can't make sweaty algae and save the world.
no, you can do it, but it's very, very expensive. I think there are
Okay.
much better ways to,
Can't scale.
like make yeah, like green fuel and things like that. So yeah, that's what I did at Rutgers.
Were
Then
your
worked.
parents political at all? And they were from South Korea,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
they didn't flee a communist regime.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no. I mean, they grew up not rich. Well, they had it was a colorful history. In both my families, there was a pattern of boom and bust, like where they had money at one point, had these businesses that were very successful, and then a business partner would go off with the money. Like there were just no like protections against things like that. So then they would
Okay.
be like destitute. It's very strange. But anyway, they came here both for education purposes. They wanted to study here. Yeah, but they were never that political, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my father actually is not even a citizen. He has a green card, but he never became a
Oh.
citizen. So
Okay.
it's sad.
Well, with that said, are you worried about him being rounded up and deported with the Trump
No,
deportation threats?
no.
No. Do you have an angle on the immigration conversation? Because you benefited from that. Your family has benefited from that. I mean,
But they
you owe your
weren't
life to that.
well, but they weren't illegal, right? So like my mom became a citizen through legal routes, and my dad got a green card. I'm not worried about that. And I think it's funny because when you look at how many people Obama deported, it was actually more per year than Trump, which a lot of people don't talk about.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just expect that illegal migrants would get deported. When I say illegal, by the way, some people say, oh, they're not illegal because they announced to themselves to Border Patrol that, and asked for amnesty. So it's not like they're outside of the system. But that's the people I mean are people who didn't have some kind of prior authorization, right? Who are not on some visa or something. So, and it's not that like Democrats use this sort of like they try to appeal to people's emotion, their empathy, bleeding hearts, and say like, oh, but these poor people, they're going to get rounded up. they just want to be here and make a better way of living. And I certainly feel for that. I think that we should have we have a legal system where some people can do that. But you just can't, you don't have a country if you just let anyone in. Like, so you just have to have these rules. And it hurts. It feels bad to have to deport people, but I think that's just where we are. We have to do it, you know. And when
It's funny
Obama did
because
it, it was okay.
yeah,
When Clinton
yeah,
did it, it was okay.
yeah. It's a yeah, yeah. The whole people who were shouting at the top of their lungs for years about Kyle Rittenhouse crossing state lines are oddly silent when they talk about foreign nationals crossing borders. What about the racism aspect of this Trump administration? What are your experiences with the likelihood of that being an issue or a concern, a valid concern?
I mean, I'm not concerned about it. We had 4 years of Trump. It's not like I felt like anything related to that.
You didn't feel the racial
Yeah,
oppression?
well, until the George Floyd stuff happened, and then some crazy things happened, but it wasn't because of Trump. I felt like it was happening because of what was happening on the left. You know, I felt like they went insane. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I don't know what people are worried about concretely. I mean, what are they saying is going to happen? That minorities will be targeted somehow, like by white people?
I guess so. There was that rash of police brutality that turned out to be overblown by the media. And then there was the Stop Asian Hate movement. And then it turned out that the purveyors of Asian hate were not necessarily Caucasian. Or
Right.
Caucasians were slightly underrepresented in that population.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a sticking point. Like the left, whatever that means, ranges from CNN, MSNBC, a lot of academics and academic institutions, the experts, so called. They have this narrative about racism that they went overboard with, but I still think that to some people it does simmer beneath the surface that have not yet allowed the contradictions in the leftist liberal framework to penetrate them. They're still really concerned about these bigoted MAGA freaks. But the problem is if they actually watch not just Trump himself, but the rallies and look at who's at the rallies, it's really like Madison Square Garden again. Jews, Asians, blacks, Puerto Ricans, apparently even.
Yeah.
It's very diverse. There's something about Trump that, like watching the infighting on the right or the post liberal or the disaffected liberal versus the harder right. They all want him. There's something about him that he's able to bring people together, even though his rhetoric can do a lot to barb and to turn people off. There's something about the energy of the movement that he's representing that is allowing a lot of people to meet under. And the racism, the accusations of racism and fascism are about a uniform party that's not actually the case on the ground. Like, it's not as ideologically uniform. And that's why there's so much energy in that, is because in that, whatever that realignment is, there's a lot of meeting of a lot of different ideas and a lot of people coming together and having a lot more discussions. And just that alone gives people a lot of license to kind of relax a little bit, laugh a little bit, chide each other maybe a little bit, and then kind of reference different ideas and bring up topics that we kind of thought were solved when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, do you think it's something about him, or is it just that he does not seem to be part of, he doesn't seem to come from that whole system or part of the machine. Like, he seems to have a mind of his own, you know? Like, I don't know that it's about him or just that we haven't had a candidate who really does seem to be apart from all of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's one of your stronger points in the video, is that he shoots from the hip, and that's a
Yeah.
blessing and a curse.
Right.
There's Sowellian trade-offs to that type of behavior.
How so?
Well, Sol always talks about trade-offs. Says
Oh,
there's no
oh, oh, yeah.
solutions, only trade-offs. So I was just
Hmm.
making a reference to your
Hmm.
intellectual hero, or somebody at least you referenced in this conversation.
Hmm.
That's a really good point. Uh, is it him, or is it what he's bringing to the table and the fact that he's just breaking down barriers? He's calling the media out as lying buffoons. And then once you kind of internalize that message, you're like, you know what? They were lying about this thing that I know about. And now it looks like they're lying about other things. And Trump is the one who's taking that hit. And then allowing us in his wake, kind of like Elon is allowing a lot of the tech bros, maybe even Jeff Bezos. I don't know why Jeff Bezos is entering, throwing his hat into the arena and halting a Kamala Washington Post endorsement. But Elon is providing cover and taking a lot of the hit. But then a lot of people are like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to come out that way too. So maybe it's his personality, but I do think on the ground and the political reality is that he does need to make connections. If you look at his, with how he dealt with the Middle East, with the Abraham Accords, how he is a businessman, he's about finding workable solutions. And I think
Yeah.
that is his nature, and then his craft is to make connections between people and make deals. He's a deal
Right.
maker. So I think that follows with his politics. And so he provides the ability for other people to come together and to make like kind of a coalition that you admit, and I think I admit too, is not the most permanent stable thing, but it's useful now. And it might lead
Yeah.
to deeper connections, bonds, if we can find the right thing that unites us. And I think that what America, great America, make America great again, or some sort of like America first kind of symbolism, patriotism that will allow us to reunify and then figure out where we are after the dust settles.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, one thing that is unique to him, this was something a friend of mine had brought up, who he certainly has a lot of endurance, and to be able to take all the media lies, the smear that he has over the years, right? Not everyone would be able to do that and survive. So that is something that is, I think, unique to Trump, and you
Yeah.
have to give him props for that.
There was something I read. He said, somebody asked him about like anxiety or something like that, like negative affect. Like, what do you do
Hmm.
when you feel nervous or something like that? And he's like, I don't have time for that. So it's interesting, but I also think that he runs off of a little bit. He runs off of the friction,
Maybe.
and that's what ticked off the media class too. Is because they would try to assault him, and he would lean into that and kind of let them double down on that. Which is a brilliant move if you can just see him in a different way. I was kind of miffed by him when he was running. I'm like, what? No. Oh. And then after a while, I had a dream about him that kind of like showed me something else about his nature. And then I started listening to him, and I heard him in the way that he was intending to be heard, which is more of a comedian,
Uh-huh.
and more of a, like the way that he speaks, his framing of things is not, it's not typical to politics as usual at all.
Hmm.
And it's actually corrosive to this consensus of conciliatory, inoffensive or politically correct mode of like communication, which is more and more false. So him even being false and lying from the hip is still a refreshing, it's refreshingly honest
Hmm.
in a way where I think that another sticking point of the people who are very against him is that he lies. He's a dishonest man. And I have no counter to that.
Neither do I. Yeah. Yeah. No, and he exaggerates a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. He bloviates, exaggerates.
Yeah. And he's not very good at defending himself. I was just talking about this recently, at the debate or wherever, people will say a lie about him, and he could have said a lot of things, just be like, hey, look this up. You can go look it up
Yeah.
yourself and tell people how to do it, so then they
Yeah.
can
So
see
they
that
called
the other side is lying.
his rally small. I think that's what he did in the
Oh,
Kamala debate.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just one example,
Yeah.
but then he won't like actually defend himself, which is a little strange because
Hmm.
you don't think of him that way. But I
Huh.
don't know. I just found it very strange that he actually isn't very good at defending himself, at least in
Yeah.
a way that appeals to people who are more in the center. You know,
Yeah. I think it's
um,
probably a business tactic, a negotiation tactic to never never to go on the defensive ever. Might just be a rhetorical strategy.
but there have been times when he has went because when people were saying, I think this was a debate, or no, what was this? I don't know what this was, but they brought up January 6th and said that, he was inciting violence and all these things. And he brought out like tweets that he had written afterwards telling people to go home, for example. So he defended himself there. I mean, he's capable of it. But my guess is that he's just heard certain things so many times. It's like, it's just, he doesn't want to say the same things over and over again. Maybe he thinks people have already heard it. But what he doesn't realize is a lot of people haven't heard it. Like they're really living in a bubble where they haven't heard his
Yeah.
comeback.
Yeah.
That's my
It
guess.
is an
Anyway.
opportunity. Yeah. What do you expect should Trump win by just a tiny little bit?
Like, how would people react?
Yeah.
The country?
What do you think shakes out? I just had a conversation with Dr. Rollergator. He's an internet personality only on
Oh, I
Twitter.
know him.
But,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. But he went through the different scenarios, like best to worst outcomes of just the election. And I see some really strong talk where if Trump wins, they're going to do everything in their power to stop him. And they're going to even set off nukes. So get your water and your Brita filter right now. People are really,
Well,
I mean, it's a spectrum. There's always a spectrum of
yeah, yeah.
people.
Uh, well, I think that we'll see some rioting at the very least.
From
People will
whom?
say from anti-Trump left Democrats, yeah. People will say he's illegitimate. That's what they said in 2016 as well. Maybe some lawfare used against him as well. I don't know enough about the law to know like what kinds of things they can try, but I've heard things about that. There's some things that they might try to do. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know, but I expect there to be shenanigans for sure. Yeah, and it worries me actually because it is hard for anyone to govern when the country is so divided and there's people rioting in the streets. And that's why I just feel like winning is just the first step. There's a lot to fight against for Trump to have a successful
Yeah, yeah,
presidency.
yeah. I think that's a good point. Your film, documentary, video essay is not just about the present, and we are what, 9 days away from the election, or 8? I
So
guess no, 7.
it's a week away. It's a week
Yeah,
away.
it's a week away. So your work could very easily be dated, but I think you made it with such honesty, and you told the story from your point of view of the misrepresentation of Trump. So should he lose, it's still a great document to see that at this moment in time, this is how we were lied to, or you were lied to. Should he win, it's still very useful for people who are very upset by that, who are open to considering other points of view, to view and maybe to relax, say, okay, maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it's not a fascist regime. Maybe there is hope for our country and we can get along, and I can just turn down my disgust response to him. So I think that it's got permanence. The document has permanence and value beyond just the moment of maybe influencing a handful of people to vote one way or another. But that said, I would take this opportunity to suggest that everybody should vote regardless of the outcome.
Yes, of course. Yes. Well, what do you think will happen if he only won by a small margin?
I think that regardless of if he wins bigly or smally, there will be lawfare. There will be. They're not going to go a full blitz of fascism, Nazi accusations, and then just give up the ghost. But I don't think that they have the sustained will anymore. The media class and the Democrats, I don't think that they have the amount of energy to be as drastic as they were in 2020 or in 2016. I think they're kind of exhausted. The people who are leading that charge are a little exhausted. And also, I think that they see the writing on the wall with the audience is kind of probably fed up with this. And I don't think, I think one of their strategies was to exhaust people with so much Trump hate that they would just vote somebody else in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that it's going to have the meme value of constantly going against that. They're not going to give up the ghost. I think that there might be a opportunity for a lot of the anti-Trump media class to go in the direction of loyal opposition and hitch their train to America first and to be ardently against Trump and his policies and anything that he does or says, but still with the aim of thinking in the future of like, well, okay, how are we going to be a better nation? What is the best thing for us? And how can we use the Trump administration or this moment in history to get to a better place? I would like the left to think less about, oh man, I just had this bad thing to say. There was this ad that they came out with to target young men where it was this, I'm really sorry for this. It was this a young man masturbating to pornography in his bed.
Oh, I saw that. That was so
And,
awful.
and this politician coming in and saying, you know, your sperm is crossing straight state lines, so the federal government's going to be involved in your pornography consumption or something like that. But the Democrats are obviously the party right now of instant gratification. And I
Mm.
would like them to back away from that's symbolic. And it's kind of the same with the abortion as a form of birth control. Like just back off the rhetoric, think long term, think about what a healthy life is and use this opportunity, this rebuke through the voting apparatus to actually reform. I don't know if they're capable of doing that, but I think that as if Trump does win, more and more likelihood they're going to have to think long term. But maybe they're in such a bubble and it's so entrenched. The academia, Hollywood, all the stuff that we call woke is so insular to itself
Yeah.
that what I'm saying is a total fever dream or pipe dream, I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. And I mean, they probably also have to think about, 4 years from now too. Will it be like JD Vance or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to try to keep up this picture of him being part of that whole bigoted movement,
Yeah. Yeah. Vance is going to be hard
Um,
because he's going to keep on showing up and talking to them. He sat down. I think it was the same room. I saw 3 different videos in the same room of him being very vigorously attacked by left-wing mainstream journalists and just like hammering it out and being completely fresh. So he's going to give them hell unless they figure out a different strategy.
mhm.
I don't know why Trump picked him, but it was a really good pick.
Yeah, I think he's doing really well. Yeah. You know what my biggest fear is? Well, no, my biggest fear is that Kamala Harris wins. But my biggest
Okay,
fear,
let's focus on that, but finish your thought.
but my biggest fear, if Trump were to win, whether he wins big or not, right, is okay. He wins. He's in office, but somehow there is some kind of scandal that really, really makes him look bad, right? Whether he's guilty or not, you know, like he could get framed or something or whatever, right? Something where like a Nixon level Watergate scandal, you know. There are some people who think that what happened to Nixon was actually like not what it seems, you know, not that Nixon wasn't a crook, but that he was sort of set up, you know, for his presidency to collapse basically. So, but if that were to happen, it would discredit like all the Trump supporters, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
just wonder, okay, what would happen to the movement after that? And then it's very difficult for people like JD Vance or anyone else at that point as well. You know, you kind of cut off the movement from
I
like,
wonder if they had the constitution and the patience to sit on something and wait until he's in office to orchestrate it then. If why wouldn't they just put something of
no,
that caliber up now?
well, I think they have tried to, but I just mean if some opportunity would arise
Yeah.
during his administration, right?
Like
Something would
cocaine being
happen.
found in the White House, maybe.
I mean that's not big enough. Nobody cares what it's not going to take, but apparently no one cares. No, something. I don't know what. Like something on the level of like Watergate scandal or, you know.
Yeah.
But and they tried to do it to Clinton too, right? But I don't think something like that would work against Trump, but something.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
will try things against
Yeah.
presidents, you know, including
Yeah.
assassination as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Why not Kamala?
Mhm.
Why not
Oh,
Harris?
oh, why not? What do you mean? Like,
Well, you said that the worst outcome from your point of view would be a Harris administration. Why?
oh, because I think the the censorship will it will get worse, not just continue. I think things have gradually gotten worse. Like censorship has gotten more and more normalized. So that's one thing. And continual wars, possibly World War III.
You don't trust her
It,
with the keys to the international kingdom? Is that what you're saying?
no, I don't think that she really knows anything about like
Well, she knows that
foreign,
Ukraine is a country and Russia is a country.
and that Russia's a bigger country. She doesn't know
Yeah,
that.
she knows that. So
Yeah. I mean,
that's a
look,
quote,
if
by the
you,
way.
yeah, yeah. If she were to be in office, that's the thing, is like she would not really be the one calling the shots there because she doesn't know anything about this. So we wouldn't know who's in charge. It's pretty similar to what we have now, actually, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we would have so we would continue with the sort of neocon agenda, okay? Um, uh, yeah, possible
Progressive
World War III.
agenda at home and then the neo agenda abroad, the neocon agenda abroad.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then continuing corruption in our agencies and all these things, and status quo there. And
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
those, I think, will just get worse and worse as well.
Yeah.
But it's more in this,
Immigration, child transition.
that too as well. Yeah. I mean, the immigration thing, she suddenly cares about it, you know. So I don't know what she would do if she were to be president, if she would continue to care or pretend to care about it. I feel like she
Yeah.
would have to because it's become this issue, you know. So they would have to do something, but I don't. But I believe she said she wouldn't deport them, and she wants them to have a path to citizenship. I think that's what she said. So yeah, I'm not for that. I know Elon Musk has said that he thinks that if she were to win, you know, a lot of these people would become citizens, and that or even if before they became citizens, they might vote, right? Even if they like, you know, that they would just vote like illegally, fraudulently. Yeah, and that's maybe the case. I don't know either, you know. So, but the worry there is that it would have a permanent uniparty, like it would just be like California, you know, like
Yeah.
permanently. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that would be horrifying to me. Horrifying. Yeah.
What do you think yourself from 2014 what would be going through her mind were she to just find this podcast and start listening to it and hear what you're saying?
You're like, that girl's crazy. I think I would have been like in disbelief. But I think I would have been curious, right? To know how did she get there? Because
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that I was crazy. So, but yeah, I would be totally baffled. Yeah.
What have you had success swaying somebody along your journey? Like, and have you had friends that have kind of charted the same path over the last few
Yes.
years?
Yes. So I have a friend, very good friend, who, while all these things were happening during COVID, we were talking about it a lot during that time. So she kind of was seeing some of the things I saw as well. So I love it when that happens. So I've had some friends kind of move along with me to varying degrees. Some people care about certain issues more than others. So they
Mm.
would be with me on certain issues, but not on others. Like they might, see like um, the dangers of the COVID vaccines, but they weren't necessary for Trump, So we'd
Mm.
agree on some things and not others. Um, but in terms of just swaying people who I wasn't actually in touch with about all this stuff a lot, like I actually have um, gotten some people to at least question their beliefs. I knew an older couple who were Democrats, diehard Democrats, and were getting boosted with COVID vaccines. And I talked to them, and they like sort of looked at one of my articles, and they
Mm.
they were, a little bit more on my side after that. Um, and then also, interestingly, another friend, uh, he we talked a little bit about issues relating to race, um, and very gradually, he's also started to see like some problems with the left as well, and now has issues with a lot of the woke stuff. And he he's at this point where he's not. I don't know exactly where he is, but when I told him that I would be voting for Trump, he wasn't horrified. So he took it relatively well. But whereas a few years ago, I'm pretty sure he would have. So he's definitely moved somewhat. I'm not
Hmm.
saying he would vote for Trump or anything like that, but he wasn't horrified. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm happy with that. I'll take
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
you lost any family members?
No, not family members. No.
Good.
Mainly because most of my family is in Korea, so they're not
Okay.
really, yeah. But my
What
parents,
do the Koreans have an opinion on the America and our
on
outcomes?
America,
Yeah.
I mean, all differing opinions, but I mean, I think that they like a lot of American culture. Like they're exposed to a lot of it, like
Yeah.
music and movies and things like that. I mean, I think they see Americans as a little bit wild in comparison. I mean, even in Europe, right? They'll see like we're like a wild bunch. I don't know though. I'm not super tapped into what Koreans
Their
think of
sentiment. Yeah.
Americans, but that's just
Yeah.
my general impression. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will also say, so my parents actually were also not quite so horrified when I told them about my decision to vote for Trump either.
Were they surprised
Um,
at all?
yeah, yeah. My mom, but so my mom, her impression was that Trump was a crazy person. So was Elon Musk and RFK Jr. But she's also not very orthodox on other things, either. So she is kind of open to things. So, and I told her, I don't think they're crazy, and here's why, blah, blah, blah. We talked about it. And, I mean, she wasn't horrified. So that's my main metric, whether it's something, if it's all right. Like she was okay with it. She did not disown me. It's fine. We could have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
And she
And you
also
can work
happens to think that the JFK assassination, that the CIA might have had something to do with it. So, she's not like totally orthodox in her thinking either.
Mm.
So anyway, and I sent her
Mm.
my video. She hasn't responded about it yet. I don't know if she's watched it
Mm.
yet. But.
Yeah. I want to send, I'm going to send it to my mom because she's
Okay.
open. We
I
had a
would
little
love
bit
to
of a
hear how
conversation.
that goes. If
Well,
yeah,
well, let's open that up to chat. You guys go and check out her video. It's in the description. Her channel is Joomi Kim. And where's your Substack?
it's called Let's Be Clear.
Let's be clear.
I'll send it to you. I don't remember what the URL is off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll
Yeah.
link that in the description. Is there, what's your favorite biology fact or finding? Something that just like really tripped you out when you learned it and you still can't.
So our mitochondria, which are organelles in our cells, they're commonly called the powerhouse of our cells. They're what make ATP. So they originated from bacteria. They used to be bacteria. So the ancestor of our cells engulfed a bacterium and essentially enslaved it, and the bacteria became an organelle, and the organelles themselves still have a little bit of DNA remaining from the original bacteria. So that's pretty crazy. And the same goes for chloroplasts in plants, by the way. So yeah, I think
Uh,
that's pretty wild.
could they flee the host organism, these organelles, and live outside of them anymore? Or are they
So
too
they
adapted?
can't, yeah, they can't live outside of the host anymore. They've
Yeah.
lost too much capability. A lot of their genome, the DNA, has gone to the host's nucleus. So they don't have enough of the DNA machinery for them to survive on their own or to replicate on their own.
Is that it always kind of creeps me out. Like I've seen some of those videos where they're kind of just moving around. They're like these little like soldiers marching around and like zipping things up and tying things apart and like this whole system. It looks, I mean, the way we represent it molecularly is very mechanistic because that's how we visualize things, but it startles me how complex life is and how much life had to happen for life to happen. Is
Yes,
that
it's pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, I went into biology because I wanted to know the secret to life. Like, what is it that makes something living? And even if you study biology on a molecular level and all these things and biochemistry, you have a better understanding, but you do not answer that question of
hmm,
how, what's the secret thing that makes it living? And how did it get to that place, this complex, such a complex thing, right? How did it get there in the first place? It's infinitely complex. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing.
yeah. Is it, do you, are you at peace with a non-religious explanation, or do you at peace with a religious explanation, or at least something to put at that unanswerable question? The gap in your
Uh,
understanding. How does your mind deal with that gap in understanding?
I'm not at peace with either explanation.
Huh.
Yeah, I think that whatever our understanding of all these things, we've probably only scratched the surface. That goes for both atheists and people who have sort of traditional religious views where they think that God is, I don't know, somebody who's a conscious being like we are. I think whatever the truth is, it might be something that we can't really grasp.
Hmm.
Yeah. It doesn't really answer it very well, but
But where would you like biology to go, or where are you pushing it? Are you still actively involved in the field? And is
not in
there,
a formal sense since I don't
yeah,
have some academic role.
yeah.
But oh boy, this is something that I can talk for hours about. But um, I think I have so many issues with how research is done in biology. It goes with actually for almost all research in science or whatever, but where you have to have some finding that's novel, but not too novel because if it's a little too heterodox, it might be, they might call it crazy or whatever, right? But it has to be novel enough, but not too novel for it to get published. Meanwhile, negative results don't get published as easily. Like by negative results, I just mean something that discovers that previous work was BS, or like there were mistakes in it or there were artifacts in the work, so you need to retract it, right? So things like that are hard to get
Hmm.
published. And then also like the grant proposals, the way that they get funded in the first place, they're very narrow-minded, they're not trying to really push the envelope. You're not really incentivized to,
Hmm.
you're incentivized to publish, these papers in these journals that don't really have a good way to detect fraud, often
Hmm.
don't notice truly novel, groundbreaking work if it comes across to them. Carey Mullis, who invented PCR when he first, I tell this story a lot, when he first submitted his work to Science and Nature, which are the top two journals, and they rejected it. And I
What's
think these things,
PCR? I'm sorry.
uh, that's, wait, you're not kidding. Oh, no, 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 it's okay. It's okay. I
I
just
come
wasn't sure
across
if you.
so many acronyms that I always forget.
Oh, no, 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 it's okay. It's a method to amplify DNA. So we were using it a lot during COVID because we have these PCR tests, so they'll take
Okay.
a little bit of, like
Swab. Yeah.
yeah, swab from
Sample.
you
Yeah.
and amplify whatever genetic material is there, to be able to detect it.
Hmm.
It was groundbreaking, Nobel Prize winning work. But the point is just that, journals at the time, the top journals at the time couldn't recognize that it was important, but it's used, it's such an integral part of molecular biology now,
Yeah.
and not just molecular biology. It's like, like criminal investigations, right? Like when you find DNA in
Okay.
a crime scene or something. So anyway, so that
The
academia is very
process.
myopic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in academia, it's very myopic. And um,
Do you
I
see
think
any
that
hope in that, or have you read about anything that could reform or fix that? Is there an institution that's able to break free from all those trappings? Or maybe, I don't want to say this, but maybe you have a comeback to this, like AI being employed to sift through findings, stuff like that?
I think that if there's going to be reform, I mean, it's possible it could eventually come from within some renegade university or something. I would love to see that happen. But it could also be just private organizations or think tanks, maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't put that much thought into it. I'd love to see it. But people, we need more independent researchers who aren't necessarily like tied down to this kind of needing to publish these dumb papers,
Yeah, yeah.
and papers that aren't too heterodox, like you can't question vaccine safety or certain other heterodoxies and things like that.
The thing about media being able to break free from the media clutch was that we had social media. And so anybody can voice their opinions. And so you have, there's this tweet that surfaces every once in a while. I worked for a year on this article and he just tweeted it out, But the science takes a lot of money, infrastructure, and discipline that I don't think can be replicated outside of some sort of institutional structure. So media is rather nimble. I can talk to anybody and they can tell me anything. And then 7 other people can either affirm or deny what they say. And then it's just a big morass. So human attention is always going to go to the novel. So it's built in all this bias and stuff like that you can run on and have alternative media. But I don't know if you can have alternative science, though I think all science is alternative insofar as it is progressing in some direction. It's progressing away from the carapace of previous thought into open ideas.
It's true that certain types of research, it would be very difficult to do without some kind of institutional backing, like things that require a lot of fancy machinery and things like that. But I was actually talking about this with Brett Weinstein on his podcast. We were talking about how in biology you don't really have theoretical biologists. Like in physics they have theoretical physicists, where they're not experimentalists. So they don't need like a lab, but they are just reading a lot of papers, they're doing calculations, they're thinking. And we don't really have that kind of role in biology. And I think that is something that would be very helpful. And that's doesn't require a lot of money. It's just,
Well, how much math does it require? I mean,
well, it depends on what kind of work you're doing, because I think there's a lot of work actually that could be done. And I discovered this when I was writing stuff related to COVID, is that there are a lot of things like you'll find in very old papers from the 60s, that probably should get another, like people should look at it again, because it's like it doesn't necessarily fit in with the way that we're thinking about that topic now, or for example, the fact that you might be trying to answer a single question that seems simple, and then you'll find evidence all over the place on it, and so somebody needs to point that out and just be like, you're making an assumption about this question when in fact, like the evidence is all over the place, but there aren't people who are doing that are just reading all these papers and synthesizing the information going back decades, like nobody's doing that because nobody's incentivized to do it.
yeah, there's no incentive. And it's probably disincentivized because you're going to be treading on people's precious ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. If it turns out you discover fraud, and those people are your colleagues and, you don't want to piss those people off.
No.
Yeah.
So what's on the horizon? I'll link to your current work, but are you working on something coming up here or something that people can be looking forward to, the next installment?
Yes. Yeah, I would like to continue working on some videos. There was a video I was actually working on before I started working on the one I just finished, but it was actually about conspiracy theories. So I might go back to that one.
Yeah.
I'll eventually go back to that one. I don't know if that'll be the next one, but
yeah.
yeah.
What's the other idea then, if you had a choice between them?
Oh, the other thing was just about how the media lies, just a more general thing about how the media lies. That doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to do with the election.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
because I
Jimmy,
think, yeah, a lot of,
you think what?
oh, that was just something I wanted to do because there's a lot of people who still believe the media. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's scary. It's scary because if you don't believe the media, who do you believe? And then you're like, well, you have to assemble your belief out of a bunch of disparate kind of voices. A
yeah,
lot of people are not equipped with the framework. The boomers specifically grew up with three channels, and it eventually became cable, and then it eventually became social media. The people who were Gen X and millennials, much rapid, like we grew up with cable that then became social media, and then the kids these days just grew up with social media. So this totally different environments, and being able to assemble a narrative, a cohesive narrative from a variety of different sources, it's a lot of responsibility, and then there's a lot of contradictions
hmm
that gives you, like, you can't just say, well, you have to kind of almost knowingly accept some sort of ideological conformity. Say, I do have some echo chamber. I'm going to try to be aware of it, but I'm basically kind of going to say they are controlling the world, and we are trying to be free of them, and then I'll work out the details later, right? So I have to have a framework. That's why I brought up, like, you already have this basic framework, even though it's a crude tool and it's conspiratorial, and but that's the framework that you have to start with, and then you can start to nuance and remain flexible of mind and open to attaching new information to that. But
hmm
it's an uncomfortable place to
No, it
be.
is. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
And your work, I just wanted to throw in one more compliment. Excellent, very balanced, and very approachable. The perfect thing to send to somebody's mom and dad, perhaps, who's not yet ready to look beyond the gated community of mainstream news. So thank you so much for putting that together and for giving me an hour of your time.
Thanks for watching it.
Okay, there we go.